Hello, hockey fans of all ages, shapes, and sizes. I'm recording this on June 13th, Macklin Celebrini's birthday. So happy birthday to the big Celebrini. I did a little article on one of my domains, benchminer.com. I'm nicknaming him the Big Celly. Obviously, selfishly, I've got a domain Big Celly, BIGCELLY.com. I guess for him, technically, it would be Big CELE. Yeah, if he wants to offer me half of his ELC to buy the domain off me, and then I'll forever, in perpetuity, keep posting stats for as long as his career for free. So, anyways, a shout out to the congratulations to the Cap Friendly guys. My other domain, Absolute Wagon, I'm working like an absolute maniac to pull together draft numbers back to 1963. And holy crap, just looking at my face, I got totally fried at the beach yesterday. Anyways, I was considering maybe, I guess I want to talk about the draft, and also first I wanted to talk about maybe some possible acquisitions for the Sharks in the off season. So I think it was Frege and Merrick talking about the unfortunate situation with Laine. Now, I think he was second overall pick behind Matthews, I'm pretty sure. Forwards usually are developed into their prime at this point. Like if you look at Marner, Matthews, guys like that who are 26, 27 years old. So we can expect big things from the big Celebrini and Will Smith. A lot of people are comparing them to kind of the Kane/Taves combo there. Potentially, like I know it's 1-4 versus 1-3, but it's kind of a cool thing to dream for if we could have the ultimate success that the Blackhawks era had. And you look at some comparables, like I'm not saying Luca Cagnoni is going to be Duncan Keith or whatever, or like say a guy like Sean Walker who they could acquire for potentially I think since the Sharks have a lot of cap space and they got to hit the cap floor, a guy like that in his prime, he's turning 30. I think he's 29 right now. He's turning 30 next year. And I look at a guy like that making, if they offered him 5.3 times 5, like a good term, that would get them a solid power play 1 type defenseman. I know Kalen Addison was kind of that hope, but he's a bit young. He could be kind of developing into his prime, 4 or 5 years later when they're kind of running for a championship, hopefully when the forwards are in their prime. So my general rule for this prime age for hockey players, I want to say defensemen and goalies take a little more time to ripen or marinate in the minors or in the development system in the AHL, etc. I want to say like 28 to 30 is the ideal time for a defenseman to kind of break through, and then probably towards the 30 mark, and then to get that big contract, usually guys in their prime for forwards is like 3 to 4 years earlier. So as I mentioned, like 25, 26, etc. So they're looking at landing that huge 8-year deal, like Marner potentially in the off season. I know that's a contentious subject, so I don't even really want to touch it with a 10-foot pole today. But like Marner in his prime, etc. Potentially landing that huge 8-year deal or 7 next year as a free agent, etc. Being in their prime a few years earlier, and the forwards often take more of a beating from defensemen, and defensemen are usually, it takes them a time to bulk up and become an actual NHLer at 220 pounds or so. Especially like even like a big buff kind of guy. Like, I don't know if there's a comparable in the league right now. That guy was an absolute menace out there. You love him on your team, but like literally he would hit 2 guys at once. And I remember a sequence in the playoffs when guys just bounced off him like rubber and flew like through the boards. He's like probably one of the most insane defensive physical specimens of all time, I'd say. Maybe obviously skill-wise, Bobby Orr and Cale Makar and these guys are coming up, and and stuff like that. So I was running by my friend Steve. They should make a Bobby Orr trophy that is not based on a decision, like objectively or subjectively by the league and voting, like the Norris. I think the Norris is still good to have like the best defensive defenseman or whatever. Or maybe they even make like a Lidstrom trophy that is like the best defensive defenseman. And that's like based on plus minus or even plus minus. I don't know. Probably that one's a voting one as well too. But I think there's room for a Bobby Orr trophy that is like the Art Ross, that is just literally like you count up their points, and the most points defenseman is the Bobby Orr winner. So the guy's a legend. Obviously, you know, I would say I thought Lidstrom was a better defenseman just because I watched him more growing up, and he was a thorn in the Sharks side all those years when they were a powerhouse with Yzerman and that. But obviously, when you look at Bobby Orr's like stats and numbers, it's like insane. So you know, you kind of got to go back, and it's a different era, right? It's like, you know, comparing Wayne Gretzky to anybody, you just can't. So speaking on that, Gretzky's number is retired across the league. One of the people I want to talk about in the upcoming draft is Liam Greentree. He's wearing number 66, which I think is pretty cool. It's like maybe you kind of, if you want to be Stonesy enough to wear that in the NHL, you might want to run that by Mario and see if he's okay with it. They've obviously retired it in Pittsburgh. If he gets drafted by Pittsburgh, he's not wearing it anyways. But, you know, if he's on another team and he's so daring, but he's like, hey, if Mario Lemieux is his favorite player of all time, maybe he runs it by him saying, hey, like, because I don't know, like the league, I'm surprised maybe they didn't retire 88. But I'm surprised actually they haven't retired 66 league-wide. I don't know if you have to, but like maybe Mario would just be like, I don't care if people wear my number. I think it's a good omen, and if that's Mario's like their favorite player, I think it looks good on him too. So anyways, now on to the draft. So Sharks obviously expected number 1. Happy birthday to the big Celebrini. He's going to be the expected number 1. I personally think Artyom Levshunov is going to be number 2 in Chicago. There's interesting movement around Demidov. I could see maybe him slipping to number 5 for like a team like Montreal. I think Sam Dickinson's probably going to go to the Utah hockey club. Is it the Blizzard, the Yetis? I don't know. There's already a huge brand named Yeti. Like maybe I saw somebody's comment, name it the Utah Blizzard with the Yeti as the logo, like the, you know, kind of like a giant snow beast or whatever. I think that's kind of cool. The kids would love that on their jerseys and stuff. Anyways, a couple people in there. So Cayden Lidstrom, I believe, probably will go 3rd. And I think potentially Tij goes to Montreal. I think they like their kind of shifty, you know, no offense, little guys like, you know, so like Cole Caufield and Suzuki and that. So I think he fits well with their kind of ethos. I wouldn't be surprised if they picked Sam Dickinson either. And then for the life of me, there's a number 4 pick in there that I don't know why I can't think of it right now. It's probably another Ruski. There's a lot of really good Russians in this draft class going near the top 10. So anyways, yeah, on to that. So the Sharks have the number 14th pick. I would want to say my preference would be, if I was GM Mike Greer for the day, I would be really targeting a forward and really targeting a winger in specifically, because their depth is full down the middle, you would think, with Celebrini obviously going number 1, Will Smith and Beasted and Edstrom coming up. I think they're going to be pretty good down the middle. So I think like there's talk of like Will Smith playing wing or Beasted playing wing. Yeah, for sure. But there's going to be other guys coming in, centers and things like that you're going to like too. So stacking the lines is always kind of fun. Like Edmonton and like Draisaitl and McDavid go together sometimes, etc. So shout out to JD Young of the Locked On Sharks. He had Beckett Seneca in his mock draft. I like that pick. He's kind of got the upside of like a Tage Thompson. My personal preference would be a guy like Nygaard. I think he's like a really hard-nosed, playoff kind of guy. He's got an NHL frame already, 210 pounds. He looked like elite on Norway's team. He looked like the best player out there in the Worlds. So I'd lean towards a guy like him. I don't think Yzerman's going to slip out of the top 10 or even down to the Sharks. He'll, like, the Wild would probably take him before. And then Carter Yakimchuk, I'd say, like, for that coveted right-hand shot defenseman, like a Levshunov is probably going to go number 2, as I said, to the Blackhawks. But Carter Yakimchuk looks like very talented, but I think I see him going in the top 12 personally. So if a guy like Yzerman or Yakimchuk slips down, I'd say maybe pick them. The other guy, as I was talking about, Liam Greentree, he's a very, very high hockey IQ kind of guy. He's got a decent shot release, and he's more of a playmaking kind of winger. So if you like that kind of guy over like a hard-nosed kind of playoff, forechecking kind of guy like Nygaard, who could play a little bit sooner. Beckett Seneca's very skinny, and I could see him taking 3 to 4 years, probably 5, to come into his shape as a man. But he's got that Tage Thompson kind of shiftiness with that right-handed shot, which is kind of, there's more lefties than righties in the league. That's why it's always coveted for defensemen. And just on that, a right-handed defenseman, Timothy Liljegren. So he's kind of an interesting case. And I believe I mentioned Patrick Laine. Actually, I don't even know if there's so many thoughts that I try to do just off the cuff here. But like Timothy Liljegren, I'll do first. I think him from the Leafs standpoint, if they target a lot of guys in the offseason, he might be a guy that would come up as an RFA that you could maybe pay $3 million. If the Sharks offered the Leafs their 33rd pick, which potentially could be a defenseman anyways, he's entering his prime. I think he's he's 25, so he's a few years along and I think he's like a perfect fit for the Sharks if they were willing to trade that 33rd. There's no way you're trading the 14th pick, I don't think, for him. But he's a kind of guy that is like 3 to 4 years, when the Sharks probably 4 or 5 years window opens up, he's going to be a prime candidate to be in the top 4 for that defensive core potentially, right? He'll grow with the team, etc. So I'd say if the Sharks offered 33rd pick for Timothy Liljegren for the straight up, potentially that's kind of a neat scenario to consider. And then the Laine thing, I think I touched on it briefly, or maybe I did in my mental notes prior to this, but Patrick Laine, the 32 Thoughts, Friedge and Merrick talked about him and that kind of crazy situation. So, imagine like a guy like Stammer signs and they get like a guy like Sean Walker at $26.5 million for 5 years, $5.3 million. The Leafs are not going to be able to offer him that kind of money, I don't think. He's projected to go at about 4.5, 5 mil. So I think the Leafs would probably be like, yeah, we'll give you a 1 year, 2 year, shorter term for like 4 mil, 4.5. And for a guy like that, so I think competitive teams are going to have shorter windows. So him entering his prime at 29, 30, guys like that get really interesting for non-competitive teams when you offer term as a carrot to sign and acclimate to the culture of the team and you build that culture. I think a lot of people, the Sharks spotlight is kind of similar to the Blackhawks spotlight last year with Bedard, right? For this. So I think this offseason is going to be really interesting to try to attract some really big names. Maybe you do some shorter term contracts for a guy like Stammer. Pay him decent if he's exodused out of Tampa, and you can kind of pull him into the Sharks system. Great leader. He's already won a couple cups. I don't know how many more ticks he wants to get off on his Hall of Fame resume, but playing and mentoring like Celebrini and Smith and some of these guys would be incredible, right? They could probably even afford to pay him like $12 million a year or something insane, right? Like for a couple of years. Obviously that limits his movement potential at the deadline. So it'll probably depend on talking to his agent and say, hey, if Tampa's, not able to sign you and you're on your way out, we can offer you something decent that will be, because Sharks are really hard up for retentions, salary retention right now. So it'll be the strategy probably to him, right? If he wants to go to a competitor at the deadline and the Sharks are the suitor for the season to kind of like, play in the West Coast, it's a little bit fun and exciting with all these young guys coming up. I think they can get some big names like that. Even like I've advocated to trade for Tavares potentially for, the beloved Logan Couture, who might only have a couple years left. And I think because Tavares, from the Leaf standpoint, is more of like a books thing, where they could sign Marner potentially if they were able to trade Tavares to the Sharks, who actually went after him hard before he signed in Toronto. Maybe Tavares could be the captain for the Sharks for the next several years, or, well, maybe if Stammer's there already, depends who signs first, right? But these kind of dominoes too, the way the Sharks, if they're crafty and they get a lot of big names on July 1st, could be like, ooh, San Jose could be like a fun and exciting team again for the next couple years here, and like, get the crowd back into it. I know there's the other process where just stink out the barn again and get another top pick and get a high draft pick. There's a guy, I think, is his name LJ Mooney or something. That might be the totally wrong guy. Or sorry, there's a Canadian who's I have picked as like 6th overall pick or 7th overall pick next year. He's a Canadian defenseman who's kind of an upcomer. That name could be, sorry, I'm not really up on the 2025 stuff yet. It's hard enough to keep track of all the guys in the 2024 draft. I'm not really good in the later rounds. To me, there's a significant drop-off after the Sharks pick at 14, so I think you'd have to get a really spectacular deal to kind of pull that pick away from the Sharks. But there's a lot of options around there that I think will actually be there, like a Nygaard, Seneca, or Liam Greentree. And it's like 3 totally different style players. So I'd be happy with any of those guys, I think. Or like I said, if Carter Yakimchuk or Cole Eiserman slips. I think that's it for me. I really want to go to the draft. And once again, congratulations to the Cap Friendly guys. I'm trying to build my own little kind of hockey stats media empire as well too. So wouldn't mind being bought out a few years from now by the San Jose Sharks. Wink, wink. But any team, it'd be an honor to be to create a stats engine even close to a modicum of success like Cap Friendly. That site is legendary. So it's sad they're going to shut it down, but I can see why. Obviously, Washington is paying big money for that. They're going to want to shut it down and have all that gorgeous little data mine for themselves, right? So I'm willing to work with any team if they want to tell me what kind of stats they're looking for. I'm a math geek. I'm a stats geek. I love Cap Friendly and all those other sites. Shout out to Puckpedia and some of those guys too. Hockey Reference. I think Hockey Reference is great. They do a lot of open sourcing of their data. Open data is really key to making all kinds of different platforms succeed. So big shout out to them. And I've gotten my data off Yahoo, which I want to say probably came from Hockey Reference. So yeah, those guys are awesome. And I think, I think it's Kaggle or some weird name. They do like data APIs for programmers. I got some data off there for the draft. So I'm looking at putting all the draft stuff up on Big Celly for prospects, and Absolute Wagon. I'm looking at all the past drafts, like jersey numbers, some kind of fun things like that. If you want to see who wore jersey number 9, like Gordie Howe, or like jumbos, like number 19 or 97 in Toronto. Like I'll try to do a huge database of jersey numbers, which would be kind of neat for all the hockey geek fans out there. I think that's it for today. So cheers, everybody, and hopefully we'll rub elbows with some other hockey podcasters and stuff. Some legends maybe will be there in the broadcasting industry. I'm not sure who's excited to go down to Vegas for the draft, but hopefully I'll be there. Cheers. Peace.